brothers and sisters in the Dharma. Today our teacher is Mr. Piya, and I knew him in the 1980s when I was in charge of the religious knowledge in the Ministry of Education, and he's one of my key lecturers to train the teachers there, and I really appreciate him very, very much. Okay, so we all know that Piya is very knowledgeable in the Dharma, and then on top of this, he has a lot of experiences in teaching. So I'm sure that today we will be benefited a lot from him. I better give more time for him than I talk. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'm supposed to talk to you about this Saddhamma Pundarika Sutra. To translate to English, it's the Sutra on or off the white lotus of the true Lord. It's a very beautiful name. This sutra was written around 1st or 2nd centuries. It's not written all at once, but written over a few hundred years. Some parts are very old, some parts are very new. And we don't know who the writers are, probably quite a number of them, of over 2 centuries. And today I will be speaking to you on chapter 8. Actually today is supposed to be chapter 7, but the Woman 5 is supposed to speak to you, but he has some duties in the US, so we've switched around the sequence. So number 7 is next week, so number 8 first, but there's not much difference really, as long as you listen and you find everything was settling. Today's chapter title is Pancha Bhikshu Shata Vyakarana Parivartaka. This is Sanskrit. Pancha means 5, Bhikshu means monk. Here, although the word Bhikshu is used, it's a kind of collective noun. It also includes nuns, monks, nuns, novices, and so on. Okay? And this is official because in the commentaries, the suttas, we know this, especially the early suttas. Shata means 100. Okay, so in India, they kind of separate the numbers. Pancha in the front, and then the noun in the middle, Shata. And the Vyakarana is prediction, and then Parivartaka means chapter. Okay, so chapter on the prediction of the 500 months. Now, I'm the only one in all the speakers who is not Mahayana or who doesn't practice Lotus Sutra. I gave a lecture on a series of lectures, 7 days actually, a residential course, like a retreat in the 1980s, 1981 actually. I think there were about 100 over people, and they were all staying in for 1 week, and it was a very wonderful experience. And every day I'll be talking on one chapter of the Lotus Sutra, a long time ago, 20 years ago, when I was a monk. So here I am again sharing you some experience. However, my practice now is, I call it early Buddhism because I don't like to use labels. Early Buddhism in the sense of I call it the quest for the historical Buddha. The quest for the historical Buddha, because I want to find out who is this person, who is this man in India who got enlightened and then taught us this wonderful teaching that we are gathered together here, teaching of peace, which is now sweeping the world of psychology. Almost every modern psychologist today has to know Buddhism, meditation especially. This is really wonderful. So we need to know the Buddha as a historical person first. It's very important because if we do not know him as really a human being who was born into this world, then there is no Buddhism. In fact, if you want to understand the Lotus Sutra completely, you need to know early Buddhism also. Because without early Buddhism, there's no other Buddhism. It's just like without Catholicism, there's no Protestantism. So it's a historical development. So now there's an interesting difference between the text of early Buddhism in India and texts like the Lotus Sutra was written after the Buddha has passed away hundreds of years. Now this is an example here of an early Buddhist sutta, in other words the ones that were recorded within 100 years or so after the Buddha passed away. This is from the famous Fire Sermon, S 35.28. S means Samyutta Nikaya. We also have the Chinese translation of this. This is in chapter 35, sutta number 28. It's very important either we remember the name of the sutta or the reference. That's the number 3528. Okay? There is also a piece of paper here. It's called a reading list, which is available behind the screen, where I've written down all the references. You can look up online, you can read them on your own. Okay? And it's also at the last page of your notes if you have that. Now you can just go to the screen behind the screen. Okay. Now just look at this fire sermon. The eye picture is burning, forms are burning, eye consciousness is burning, eye contact is burning, and whatever feeling arising with eye contact is condition, whether pleasant or painful or neutral, meaning neither painful nor pleasant, that too is burning. Burning with what? Burning with the fire of greed, with the fire of hate, with the fire of illusion. Burning with birth, decay, and death, with grief, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, and despair, and say. What's interesting here is after that, each of these is attributed for all the 6 senses. 6 senses, 5 physical senses plus the mind. You notice the eye is highlighted, right? You can see here the keyword, and then each of these, everything is repeated. Okay? So this is a hallmark of the early Buddhist texts. They're very repetitive. But if you look through the whole of the Lotus Sutra, you find it's like a novel, because Lotus Sutra was written at the time was writing was popular, well-known, in fact respectable even. So you can imagine a time in the early Common Era where writing was more widely available. And this one of the earliest, one of the first times maybe anything sacred was written down. Can you imagine the first time the word for in Chinese, Buddha, was written in Chinese? So to the Chinese, the letter, the word is the thing. Okay? So this is the big difference between Western idea and Chinese idea. In the Western idea, the word is not the thing. In other words, the letters only represent something, but to the Chinese, the word can be the thing. Okay? So when the Lotus Sutra or any sutra at that time were written down for various reasons, there was a great respect, excitement about it. People just believed it. Of course, some of the sutras were not true, not correct. So when all these sutras came to China, there was a lot of need for correcting or removing some of the false sutra. And this was done, and today we have this Chinese Tripitaka, which is very huge. And the first 2 volumes of the Chinese Tripitaka, the Sanjana is called, the Agama Sutras. And these Agama Sutras are very close to early Buddhism. And today, you find that many scholars are studying, comparing the Chinese version with the Pali and Sanskrit, and it's a very exciting area of comparative Buddhism. Not comparative religion, comparative Buddhism. In other words, we begin to compare what I've shown you here and with the Chinese versions. Because what happened is, at some point in India, Buddhism disappeared around the 12th, 13th century. Fortunately, by that time, one group of Buddhists came down to Sri Lanka with the Tripitaka during Ashoka's time, you remember. And fortunately also, there were monks and people who brought the sutras northward to China. So you have 2 different collections at different times. And then Buddhism disappeared from India. So you have these 2 very precious collections of very ancient teachings. And these are the ancient teachings which interest the mind scientists today, the scholars who are doing counseling and psychology, because they find these teachings are very simple and they address the mind directly, methods of meditation and theories and case studies and so on. Okay? Now, I have to start with an apology here, because when I was invited to talk about Lotus Sutra, William approached me, I protested, I said, oh, I can't talk about the Sutta because my practice is early Buddhism, I rather talk on the early Suttas. And then he said, what you can, you can speak for yourself, speak for Theravada. Well, I didn't want to disappoint him. He said, okay, I'll try my best. So here I am, presenting to you my personal views on the Sutra. Of course, when views are concerned, some people agree with this, some people agree with it. There are two groups here today. You find that some of you who are practitioners of Theravada, the early Buddhists, many of you are practicing Mahayana, early Buddhism. So I have to present both sides fairly. So this is I'm going to go to the Sutta right now. So if you have your notes, you find in section 6, there is this, in the verse, there's a very interesting saying in the section 6 of chapter 8. Okay? If not, it's on the screen anyway. So the Sutta, Lotus Sutra says, they here are the monks, the Shravakas, okay? The teachers. Let me explain quickly Sravaka first, because I remember somebody asking the meaning of this. By the way, if you do not know any word that I mentioned, you don't know what's the meaning, put up your hand right away, interrupt me so that I can explain. Otherwise, you won't understand what I'm talking about. Sravakas are the listeners. They are the 4 kinds of saints. In other words, the monks who are either going to be enlightened or already become enlightened. They are the direct disciples of the Buddha. That's called Sravakas. Okay? So these are enlightened or monks or disciples. They can also be laymen or going to be enlightened. They show themselves possessed of human passions or the 3 poisons. 3 poisons here, you see the note there, greed, hatred, delusion. Now there are different translations here because I have taken this translation from Cato and there are also other translations. Sadly, none of these translations that I've come across are fully satisfactory. Some are good in certain parts, some are not. So sometimes you have to compare the translations. And one reason why these translators not sure of themselves is because they do not know early Buddhism. So they were studying maybe from Chinese translations, Japanese translations. The moment something, an Indian teaching, Sanskrit, or what called Prakrit are the vernacular languages that come from India. Once it's translated into Chinese, there's a long history. In fact, Buddhism is sometimes called a translated religion. Chinese Buddhism is all translations. So the moment it's translated into Chinese, it becomes Chinese. The meaning is Chinese. And you know how wonderful and powerful Chinese words are. You can talk a lot about just one word. And the meanings also are very Chinese. One of the first problems they faced was they do not know what words to use. There was no such word to compare with the Sanskrit or Prakrit. So they use what's available. And many of these terms were already used by the Taoists. So there was this confusion with Taoism. For example, Wu, action of non-action. So they see the path as interpreted in that way. So from there you get new ideas which are not found in India. New ideas in Chinese Buddhism, for example, you're already awakened, but you don't realize it, the kind of ideas. So you find these teachings are not found in India because of the influence of the Chinese word from Taoism. This is the early part. Okay? And later, they realized this problem and then they started introducing their own words. For example, using sounds, where parami becomes polomi. So, and of course, the Chinese scholars say, what's all this? The non-Buddhists, they were criticizing the Buddhists, they were making strange new words and so on. But these words stuck and became famous. In fact, one of the greatest contributions of Buddhism to Chinese culture is a huge amount of new Chinese words were introduced. The Chinese language became very rich and philosophical also. And we can talk a lot about that area. There are special disciplines, special scholars specializing in this area alone. Wealth that Buddhism has contributed to Chinese culture. So here when we look at the Lotus Sutra or we study any kind of Buddhism, we must first of all know where this Buddhism comes from. And the Buddha is not a prophet, he's not some god or some strange figure, he was human. And this is very important for us as practitioners today. Because if Buddha was a god, you can never become awakened like a god. You cannot become God. But Buddha was a man just like you and I. He saw the truth and he was free from suffering as a result. But once he became Buddha, he's no more a human like us. In fact, in a very famous sutta called the Lotus Sutra, someone asked the Buddha, he looks at the Buddha's footprint, so he is very good reading footprints instead of palm prints. So he went and followed the footprint. When he met the Buddha sitting under a tree, he says, "Are you a deva, a god?" He says, "No, I'm not a deva." "Are you a yaksha?" Yaksha is one of those spirits in ancient India. He says, "No, I'm not a yaksha." "Then are you a Gandharva?" Gandharva is a kind of like a heavenly angel. You see in Chinese paintings, angels play music. Gandharva. Buddha said, "No, I'm not." So this person thought, "Oh, must be a human being." So, "Are you a human being?" Buddha said, "No, I'm not a human being." Because whatever defines a human being, we suffer pain, we're full of defilements, we're reborn, is no more there. So the Buddha said, "No, I'm not in that category either." So in other words, the Buddha is unclassified. But he said something very interesting. He gave a very nice verse. He says, just as a lotus grows in the water, the roots are in the water, it goes to the muddy water, the lotus opens up in the bright sunlight. Even so, through my purity, I am Buddha. So in other words, the Buddha is a unique being. And you see a lot of this idea in Mahayana. You see the Buddha as a very special kind of being. So here, coming back to why I took up this invitation to talk. I was, after accepting the invitation up to the first day of the first talk, when Dr. Cho was giving the talk, I was very troubled. I said, what shall I talk about? If I speak from early Buddhist point of view alone, a lot of Mahayana may not be happy. On the other hand, if I don't present the Theravada or early Buddhism aspect, then the early Buddhists or the Theravada Buddhists may not be happy. So I really thought myself to a situation. Now, something strange happened on the morning of that first lesson. I had a dream. I woke up with a dream. And in this dream, I found out what I have to say. So today, my presentation to you is based on that dream. It's nothing magical. It's like the problem is solved. How should I talk in such a way that everybody is happy? At least I try to. Okay? Now, the big problem is this. You hear again and again the last few weeks, the main statement which the Theravada Buddhists have problems with. These are the most exciting classes that I've had, by the way. A lot of action, reaction, which is really good, okay? As long as you debate each other with words, you don't hit each other with bombs and so on, I think that's wonderful. So, you hear the speakers tell you, the arahats are not really awakened yet. They need to become Buddhas. So the Theravada said, And you find it in some other places where there are monks, the monks walk out, just like in one of the chapters of Lotus Sutra, you remember, the monk walked out. This is nothing new, they would definitely walk out because they tell them the arahats need to awaken, so on. I never heard that before. Nowhere in the early suttas ever you find such a teaching. Now this is the big problem. How do we find the middle way here? Is there a way or is there a teaching we can put together and make everyone happy? That both sides can say, okay, I can accept that. Anyone has an idea? Alright, it's a very simple idea actually. Now if we think of arahats in terms of a person, we think of Buddha as a person, we have problems. You say arahats becoming Buddhas, one person changing into another person, we have problems. We are not talking about that. In fact, even the Mahayana speakers, I don't think they talk about that thing. So in other words, it is something not spoken which should be said that will clarify the problem. Think of arahathood, think of Buddhahood, not persons. This is the teaching of non-self, anatta. What happens when a person, could be a monk or a layman, usually a monk who becomes an arhat. Remember, he's no more a person. He's just like what the Buddha said to the Brahmin Dona. You're no more a person like you and I here. Because we are talking about an awakened being. An arhat is just like the Buddha. In other words, he has attained Buddhahood with a small b. So he doesn't need to go further anymore. This is very clear in early Buddhism. Okay? So if anyone says something different, that is not early Buddhism, it's Mahayana, which is fine. Okay? But if you talk about Buddhahood, Arahathood, you find it's easier to understand. Right? We're talking about states of mind. Arahathood is awakening, Nirvana. Buddhahood is awakening, Nirvana. There is no difference in Nirvana. There are no Buddhas, no Arahats in Nirvana. You can't talk about Nirvana anyway. Do you all accept this approach, the explanation? Is it fair enough to both sides? You think that, this kind of is fair? I feel this is something, it's the best we can go to see the state of mind of yours. Another interesting point you should understand is that the Dharma is timeless. In other words, you cannot fix it. Right? So once you talk about things and places, names of people, you put that into time. Right? Here again, you have to think very carefully when you listen to religious talk. Sometimes religious teachers, they say new things, which we don't understand. They define things into reality. But you got to understand, just because you define things doesn't mean they exist. For example, I say unicorn, okay? The unicorn, I think everyone knows unicorn doesn't exist, right? The unicorn, a horse with one horn on the head, But I can describe this unicorn perfectly. It's a horse, got 4 legs, got a sharp horn in detail. Still, it doesn't exist. You must remember this. But we like unicorn stories. So many of the stories in the Jatakas, early Buddhism, Mahayana, you find their stories. So you have to know the difference between these two, in other words. Yeah? You must know what is a story, what is a direct teaching. It's very important. The Buddha gave us an explanation here, but I'll come to this in a moment. Let me just speak about this. By the way, all these words are in the little piece of paper, the last page of the notes, okay? And there's a sheet of, as I said, is behind the wall there. You don't have to copy all this down. You can just write extra notes if you like anyway. So we come to this basic question. When you listen to the Lotus Sutra, when you practice Buddhism, what is the purpose behind it all? I'm sure we don't come here just to listen to the Lotus Sutra. We want something higher and deeper. We want the Lotus Sutra to change our lives. The Lotus Sutra is full of stories, parables. It is the one sutra that's got the most parables and some of the most important and beautiful Buddhist parables, if you like. What is interesting here is, remember one of the first questions I asked during this series of lectures is that the Lotus Sutra was written around the time when Christianity arose in the West. And Christianity also has got lots of parables. So sometimes I wonder whether the Buddhists were aware of what's going on in the West, and they came up with this set of parables also to answer this challenge. Because these parables are just as good or even better than those parables in the Bible. So these are some things worth thinking about. I'm not saying I know anything about this, I'm saying this is something worth thinking about. So to be a Buddhist, therefore, in other words, is to transform yourself into a better person. It's not to remember this sutta, that sutta alone. You may be very good in chanting, you may know a lot of mantras, but if we are not changed, there's no quality of life, then something is wrong, isn't it? If we know a lot of suttas, but we're not friendly with people, and we are not kind to people, then we're not practicing the Buddha's teaching. Right? And that's why here, we started off with this idea of a lotus fellowship. Lotus is one of the most wonderful things that I have seen in my life as a Buddhist, and I think I'm very happy to, I've been a Buddhist for about 45 years now, I'm 66 this year. So this is one of the most exciting gathering group that has been formed, the Lotus Fellowship. Because here we get together those teachers who have been invited to talk on the Lotus Sutra, and many of us sit together and talk. You should watch us when we talk. You should record it one day, watch it. You have to see it. It's a really happy event. You imagine those Viking gatherings, Robin Hood gathering, very noisy, So in this really wonderful gathering, anyone can talk what they want. And yet at the same time, there is a seriousness to it. We are open to each other, and we have a dialogue with each other. Because I told my friends and the teachers here in this group, I say, this is a wonderful group. We have religious dialogue, right? The Buddhists are very tolerant of other religions, but we find the Buddhists are not tolerant of each other. Do you agree? Yeah, so we often hate each other. Sometimes you go to the temple, you find they don't look at each other, they avoid each other. So it's what's going on here? Something's wrong. You've forgotten all these wonderful teachings, So the teachers got to show example. Because the teachers don't talk to each other, don't smile, they avoid each other. Wow, what more to talk about the students? So I say you must have intra-Buddhist dialogue. Dialogue among the teachers, among the Buddhists, amongst the temples. And people say, yeah, that's a good idea. I say, okay, it's wonderful. So remember, to be a Buddhist is to change yourself. First, we change our body and speech. That's called keeping the precepts. We keep the precepts so that our mind are peaceful and calm to change our mind. We structure, arrange our mind so that we are more peaceful. Peaceful body, peaceful mind allows wisdom to arise. Wisdom for what? Wisdom to free us from suffering. Understand the true nature of suffering. Suffering is a way of learning life. Suffering is not something causing us pain alone. It is telling us something is wrong, something is missing. Whenever you feel pain, your body is getting a message, something is wrong. Then you see what's wrong and then you correct yourself. That is what suffering is about. That is why the Buddha started teaching the suffering first. So this is where, when you look at the different teachings, any kind of sutta, whether early sutta or Mahayana suttas or Vajrayana suttas, you've got to ask yourself, or not necessarily just suttas, even books you read, literature. After so many years in Buddhism, decades in Buddhism, I tell myself, I see the Dharma everywhere. That is why in my first remark here in this gathering, I said that some people say they couldn't understand the Lotus Sutra, very confusing, right? So I said, well, try to see the Lotus Sutra like you all watch Star Wars. Somebody got very upset. And even complained, say, this Piya, what's he talking about, I mean, this is a sacred sutra, and he's bringing in this entertainment, Star Wars, I said, wow, some people don't like entertainment, I feel so foolish, and I should have thought about that. I love Star Wars. I watch the whole series because there's so much Dharma in it. May the Force be with you. Darkness and light. There's so much meditation in it. Oh, by the way, in New Zealand, there's some people there, when they ask what is a religion in the official paper, religion blank is put there, Jedi Knights. They actually follow the ways of those, those fighters in Lotus, Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, it's an official religion in New Zealand. So my point is, why do I use Star Wars? Because I like Star Wars, and I think this Star Wars is based on, the fact that this series is still going on, the length of our human life, the whole series, is because people like those stories. There is a Chinese version of Star Wars long ago. It's called Monkey Story. Chi. I'm sure you all have seen that story somehow. Possibly. I've seen many versions of that story, although I cannot understand the Chinese. I'm a certified banana. I enjoy those Chinese stories of Chi because the Chi story of Sanchang, Jupiter goes to fetch Tipitaka from India. And he has three friends, right? Monkey, Sandy, Pixie and Sandy. Those three companions, they represent the three poisons or three unwholesome roots, greed, hatred, delusion. So you see, it's called an allegory. So here, if you look at this teaching the Buddha gave, this is from the Book of Truths in Anguttara. The Buddha said, when you look at this teaching, ask yourself, is it a story or is it a direct teaching? The Star Wars talks about all these bad guys fighting the good guys, the bad guys lose in the end, right? So that is a story, that good triumphs in the end. Here you have in the monkey story, this monk is very patient, but these three mischievous disciples follow him around. They are actually not separate characters, they are part of him. The three roots, greed, hatred, delusion, are all part of us. So he has to be very patient with them. So in the end, they all change, just transform into really good people, awakened beings. So whenever you look at a sutta, you look at a story, you read literature, you find there is some Dharma there. The Dharma is everywhere. I cannot understand if someone says the Dharma is only in the temple and only Dharma only appears on Sunday. The Dharma is everywhere in our lives. Inside us, most of all. And we discover this Dharma within us. That's the whole idea that we're coming here to listen to the Lotus Sutra. So my advice is, if you are confused by the Lotus Sutra, you are getting it. If you understand that confusion, you got it. I can't explain this. This is a point. Go back and think about it. Okay, now this is from section 2 of your printout. If you don't have printout, okay, you can look at the screen. In the chapter 8, section 2, there's this paragraph of this verse. Here, immediately he rose from his seat. This is Puna, okay? He arose from his seat, went before the Buddha, prostrated himself at his feet, then withdrew or moved to one side. This is very common. Even in early sutta, you find that someone will bow before the Buddha and then stand on one side. This is an Indian tradition. You can see this in Indian temple. You find that if you go to an Indian temple, there's one there in your house in Jurong East, you find if you stand at the main entrance, there is this empty corridor right to the main shrine. The devotees will stand on the left and right. Let's call it one side. It's a standard Indian way of showing respect to the holy person or to the god. So that's me at one side. So you notice that you don't study early Buddhism or Indian culture in this case, you don't know what one side means, right? Then there's something else. Gazing upon this honored countenance, is the Buddha's face, without a moment turning away his eyes. I've not seen anyone in translation explain what this means. Anyone remember anything about this famous line, underlying one, without a moment turning away his eyes? Why did he not turn away his eyes? His eyes are transfixed on the Buddha. What's happening here? It's a very interesting situation. It's almost like he suddenly fell in love with the Buddha. But more than that, he was showing his respect to the Buddha. But what is the story behind this? What is the, we say, the origin of this story, if you like? Anyone remember this story? What story is it? Sorry? Now you remember when the Buddha got enlightened, the first 7 weeks. At one point, during one of the weeks, he was doing his walking meditation, and then 1 week he stood very still, standing meditation. He was doing walking meditation, sitting meditation, probably lying down also, and then standing meditation. For 1 week the Buddha stood, just like that, in deep meditation. I don't recommend you do that, but he can do very deep meditation, get to jhana, and he looked at the Bodhi tree with the unblinking eye, animisa lochana, unblinking eye. He looked at the Bodhi tree. Why? The Buddha's gratitude to the Bodhi tree for having sheltered him during his struggle for awakening. This is the first statement in ecology. Love trees. If people out there say Buddhists are tree worshippers, smile and say, you are right. Sadhu. We love trees, we worship trees. If not for trees, the human race will die. Do you agree? Trees transform sun's energy into the food that we take. But in the case of the Buddha, the Bodhi tree sheltered the Buddha. So the Buddha showed his gratitude by standing there, gazing at the tree for 1 week with the unblinking eye. Wow! That is, how do you do that? You try and look at me without blinking your eye for 5 minutes, your tears will come. So we're not talking about ordinarily opening your eyes, you know. Okay? What is happening here? The Buddha visualizes the tree and he uses the picture, he holds the Bodhi tree in his mind in deep jhana, deep meditation for 7 days, standing. But to us, it's as good as ice. This is my explanation. Okay? Of course, there could be other explanation. Okay? So here, this story reminds us of that event. Puna is showing his gratitude to the Buddha in the same way by showing his unblinking eyes. Today, our teenagers do that to their Korean pop stars, K-pop. You look them with an unblinking eye, but that's different. Glassy and lyric eye. Yeah? And then after that, when the K-pop people go back to Korea, they get depressed. Not in Buddhism. If you're happy all the time, once you get a peaceful experience, joyful experience, meditation experience, you remember it happily all the time. So when you hear about all these teachings in the Lotus Sutra and many other sutras, this yana and that yana, it can be confusing sometimes. Especially you only come here to hear, 1.5 hours or even then for so many weeks. Still, and so many speakers, so sometimes you get bewildered, you get confused. For example, in Lotus Sutra, they talk about ekayana, the one way. There is a similar word in early Buddhism in the Satipatthana Sutta on meditation. It's called ekayana. Sometimes the two words get mixed up. Okay? Ekayana is eka meaning one, ayana means going, one going. That means this is the only way if you want to have peace of mind through meditating. That is the middle way, the one way, the one going. Okay? Later writers use the word eka yana, the one vehicle. Okay? So this is a new idea. By the time Lotus Sutra was written in the early centuries of our common era, there were so many schools of Buddhism. By that time, there were more than 18 schools already in India. So you can imagine, so many groups. So some of these people who have great vision, they say, why can't we just have one kind of Buddhism? So they came up with this idea, Ekayana, okay? Buddhayana, whatever. So these are all terms. But the problem is, every time you name a new name for Buddhism, it becomes another group. So I thought, I've gone through this long ago, as a young Buddhist, we all also thought ideally, we say, why can't we have one Buddhism? But once you come up with a new name, it becomes another Buddhism. It's just like this very interesting story of Sutta, where this Brahmin, this clever priest, who is also a scholar, and he got very upset with the Buddha, because the Buddha knows all the answers and all the views. So one day he came to the Buddha and challenged the Buddha. He thought the Buddha would not be able to answer him. He said, he called the Buddha something like just sir, because he's not Buddhist. Master Gautama, sir. He says, I have no views. So when he said that, he thought the Buddha would not be able to say anything to him. I have no views. And the Buddha just smiled and said, my dear friend, that's another view. You got it? There you are. So if you say, we bring up a new name, maybe we say, no name Buddhism, it's another form of Buddhism. So I thought myself, oh yeah, this is really becoming troublesome, Why don't I just say, use something simple, small letters, early Buddhism, less problem, In other words, why don't we just find out, what did the Buddha teach? learn the suttas, meditate, be nice to people, be happy with your family, bring happiness wherever you go. That's really wonderful. Right? So it doesn't matter which Buddhism you follow. Notice how much religion is causing so much suffering in the world today. Bombings and killings. And the latest one, you find this one, Hare Krishna gurus molesting girls, young children, for years. Just got caught into prison. These are very troubling things. So we must be very careful with religion. It's a double-edged sword. So you understand what religion is. Don't get lost in it. Okay? So when you come to Buddhism, there's only one way. That's the Eightfold Way, middle way. All the teachings that call itself Buddhism must go this way. So there's no need to follow. Okay, now we come to another passage, section 16 of the chapter 8. This is quite straightforward. Here, the Buddha is telling the monks about Purna. These bhikshus are the monks. Purna, the monk, the Arahat, also was the foremost amongst the preachers of the law under the 7 Buddhas. And it now is again the foremost among the preachers of the law under me. There are different kinds of monks, different talents. So certain monks are good in psychic powers, for example, Moggallana. Some in wisdom, like Sariputta. Purna is very good in teaching the Dharma. Now here, according to this is a Mahayana teaching, not early Buddhist teaching. According to this Lotus Sutra, the Buddha was doing the same thing, had the same quality in the past Buddha's time also. 7 Buddhas. Who are the 7 Buddhas? Okay, there in the notes, these 7 Buddhas are Vipassik, Shiki, Vishvabu, Prapuchanda, Kanakamuni, and Kashyapa. Those are all names in Sanskrit, and you have the brackets of other names. That is 6, right? And number 7 is, of course, our Buddha Shakyamuni. So these are the 7 Buddhas. They're very famous, the 7 Buddhas. This is the most ancient list of Buddhas, 7 of them. However, in one translation done by Jean Reeves, he said that our Buddha is number 8. So that was a mistake. Okay? So we find, that's why I said, if you do not study early Buddhism, you will make mistakes like that. Historical mistakes in this case. So it's good to have a broad base, study Buddhism from a non-sectarian point of view if possible. You can see the details here. This SD here refers to Sutta Discovery. This is a project I've been doing for the last 12 years, translating all the suttas, early suttas. We've got about 50 volumes and 10,000 pages of them. Fully annotated translation. They're available online. The address is in the notes given to you. So you go to volume 1, chapter 10, section 2.1, you get all the names of all these Buddhas, and the list of all the 24 Buddhas, all the ancient Buddhas, all their names are there, numbered according to their position from our present Buddha's time. It is all available online. Okay? So when we look at Buddhism, real Buddhism, true Buddhism, there's no prefix. There's no Chinese, no Indian, no Tibetan, no Japanese. The moment you put a name in front, you limit it. Buddhism is like fresh air. You can't say Chinese fresh air, Indian fresh air. It's just fresh air. Okay? However, if I can explain further, I think Buddhism is going to get upset with me. Because remember, he announced, he says, we are spreading Chinese Mahayana Buddhism, right? I'm not against that. Remember, I told you earlier, Buddhism contributed a lot to Chinese culture. And it is understandable that this temple wants to promote Chinese Mahayana Buddhism because we all value culture. And to that extent, it's wonderful. At the same time, I'm going to tell you there is a hidden secret in this temple not many people know. Although it's a Mahayana temple, there is an underground Theravada gathering here. Once every 2 weeks. A few of us have come here, but the audience is in the hundreds worldwide. Because we recorded it on YouTube. Every 2 weeks, in the ground floor of the library, we have Sutta study. But this is not the first time we're doing it, you know. 3 years before this temple was built, we were all studying the early sutras in the bungalow next door. The trustees of this temple gathered together every Sunday and we studied sutras. Those were very happy memories for me because it makes me one of the oldest members here today amongst you because I've been here. Although I am Theravada, this temple welcomes me even though I am practicing early Buddhism. So you see, in other words, although we say Chinese, Mahayana Buddhist, we are very open. And I run many courses in Mahayana temples too, all kinds of temples. Right? So it is called the oikomini in Buddhism. Oikomini is a big word meaning community. Wherever you go to a Buddhist temple, you are welcome. You should feel welcome. If you don't, I would suggest make a big hoo-ha about it. So we Buddhists like to keep quiet, you know. You think something is wrong, you keep quiet, and the problem continues. You got to talk to the right people. When they hate you, it's okay, because you have done the right thing. And later they will like you. Because if you go to the temple and then they tell them, sorry, you cannot come in because you're not Burmese, it's sort of odd, isn't it? You can't come here because you're not Chinese. Then something's wrong, right? So what I'm saying, you can call yourself what you like, you can promote any kind of Buddhism you like, but you must have space for other people who are different. So there's one question I asked, I said, okay, it's fine you call it Chinese Mahayana Buddhist, but what if an Angmo comes here, you know? He can't speak Chinese, another real imported banana comes here. So I want to learn Buddhism. And he says, sorry, it's only Chinese Mahayana Buddhism and this poor man can't study Buddhism. That's not the case. We have programs, we have a place for such people. So although we use labels, it's just a skillful means for a project, the vision we have. But there is space for everyone here. So this is one temple, they have that space. In fact, I like to see this temple as a Singaporean temple of the future. You go from outside, you see it doesn't look like an ordinary temple. Some people thought it's a country club, right? Say, no, it's a temple. You can see the Heart Sutra written outside. It's a beautifully designed place. Very modern, very clean. It's the cleanest temple I've seen. Right? And also very modernized. Sorry, Tapecho. Yeah? Okay, then you have another verse from the Lotus Sutra, section 10. Among those preachers of the law, of the Dharma, he was also the foremost, still about Purna here, and in regard to the law of the void, emptiness, preached by the Buddhas, he was clear-minded and penetrating. He attained the 4 degrees of unhindered wisdom. Okay, here you are, we come to a term, a technical term. None of the sutras, translations explain this. In fact, there are lots of terms in Lotus Sutra, they're not explained in the translation. So if you do not know early Buddhism, you don't know what's going on. Except the story is okay, they're fine, but the doctrine aspect you won't know. And sometimes they translate it in very strange ways, even I don't know what they're talking about. That's why I look at the Sanskrit version. Okay? So then I found out, oh, okay, this is what it means. Because the Sanskrit and Pali are very close. Here, 4 degrees of unhindered wisdom. That means there are 4 kinds of wisdom. Or, they're called Patisambhida. So when I see the word Patisambhida, I say, oh yeah, now I know what they are. They refer to the 4 analytic skills. In other words, if you really want to know the Dharma well, you want to be a Dharma teacher, what skills must you have? These are the 4 things you really must master. And the Arahats have really mastered these 4 wonderful skills, and I think it's good for us to also take note of this. Number 1, you must know the meaning of what you're going to teach. Artha. Artha in Sanskrit, Artha in Pali. Meaning. What is the meaning of this sutta? What's the meaning of this story? What's the meaning of this person's action? What's the meaning of this suffering? Then the teaching makes sense. So number 2 is the teaching, the Dharma, the teaching. Okay? The teaching can be presented in different ways, but you must know what it means. So you have the word, you have the meaning. The letter and the spirit. Number 3, you have to be a good teacher. By the way, to be a good teacher doesn't mean you must stand before a big crowd, you know. Any one of us can be a teacher. It's not a choice we have. You work in the office, you never talk about Buddhism before. Someone comes to you and says, "Oh, you look so peaceful, huh? How come you look so peaceful?" Of course you will say, "I'm a Buddhist." Maybe you say, "I come to Kominsu also that be good." Then someone will ask you, "Hey, tell me about Buddhism." They're sure to ask you, right? So you can't say, "No, I can't, I don't know anything, I can't teach you anything." That would be rather uncompassionate, wouldn't it? You should at least say something. Yeah? When the moment you say something about Buddhism, you are a teacher. And as teachers, we are also learners. I have to learn a lot in order to teach. And among the Dhammakarras, we have a saying. Dhammakarras are the full-time lay Buddhist workers. We say, as we learn, we will teach. As we teach, we will learn. Please keep that in mind. So, language is one more thing you have to master. For some reason, maybe some past karma, I can never master Chinese. I think one reason is because the local Chinese like to laugh at us bananas. So that discourages us from mastering the language. It is an inborn problem. We get looked down upon. But when I went to Thailand, within 1 year, I learned Thai as a monk. And then the next 2 years, I sat the Dhamma exams and passed all of them, the great one. In fact, the novice master got quite upset with other novices. He scolded the local novices. They were much younger than me anyway. He says, "What's wrong with it all? This monk who is a foreigner," they thought I was Vietnamese, by the way. They said, "This monk, how can he pass on the exam and you can't?" But the reason is because I had a Western education, we learned to think. I mean, the more difficult exams, you have to answer questions analytically, not just memorizing. This knowledge is very good memorizing. Anyway, my point is, you got to respect people, support them, then they will learn the language more easily. And I easily pick up Western languages. Sometimes if I meet a French friend, I sound like a French. I speak German, I sound like a German. So easy, because you find you want to communicate with them. So then Pali, Sanskrit, English, of course, are languages we need to master if you really want to teach Buddhism well. So you got to master language. You must love language. And if you love language and you want to teach the Dharma, I will advise you also must love literature. Because when you look at the sutras, the Tipitaka, it is also literature. It's religious literature. When I was in Berkeley, they have a special course, the Bible as literature. And I also know some of my scholar friends, they study the Tipitaka as literature. Now, one advantage in studying sutras as literature, you begin to see the structure of language. Why the Buddha said this? What's the meaning of this term? Why he used a different tense here, past tense here, present tense here, future tense. You can explain what happens in a sutta more clearly, in a more interesting way also. And finally, you must have wit. Make people laugh. But not laugh too much. Then you'll go back remembering laughter, empty air, but you forget the teaching. Right? A balance. Okay? So that's called wit, presenting the Dharma in an interesting way. Meaning, teachings, language, these are the four analytical skills which Puna and many of these great architects have. Now we have two more verses from the Sutra, chapter 8. This time we come to a little more deep doctrine. That Buddha will make his Buddha land a 3,000 great thousand universe of worlds as many as the sands of the Ganges, with the precious 7 jewels, jewels missing, 7 jewels as its earth. Just imagine this. Instead of sand, they're all diamonds, lapis lazuli, and all these amazing stones. There's so many out there that people don't bother to pick them up anymore. They step on them. And I suppose you've got to imagine a little bit. All these stones are arranged very nicely, smoothly. Otherwise, very painful to walk. Okay? Now comes the interesting part. This is a description of one of the Buddha's paradises. Like it might as well be Western paradise. Okay, its ground level as the palm of the hand, free from hills and valleys, runnels. Runnels are tiny streams. These are used by the Kato, runnels and ditches. And its midst filled with terraces of the precious sandalwood. By the way, there is a sutta in the Pali canon, in the early Buddhism, which talks in a similar tone. Talks about this ancient king. He built this beautiful garden with jewel trees and jewel ponds and so on. There is one sutta, very interesting. So you find that the roots of all this are found in early Buddhism. It's called the Suddasana Sutta. Okay, the Buddha land is a whole universe. Can you imagine a huge universe, 3,000 great thousand years, something like our galaxy. And what does this mean? It means that in those days, or Buddhists in general, they are aware of the nature of time and space. That this is not our only world. In one of the early sutras, in the Anguttara Nikaya, the sutras, the Buddha told the monks, as monks, just as there is this universe of ours, with human beings and all other beings and various heavens, so there are many other universes like this. In modern language, what is the Buddha talking about here? Parallel universes. Parallel universes. Do you know any other religion that talk about parallel universes? I don't know. I think only the Buddha talk about parallel universes. And the other commentaries even talk about Milky Ways and galaxies and so on. I don't go to that, it will take too much time. Okay? So we are aware of all this time. So the Mahayana use all these ideas to say, well, if there are other universes, the Buddhas. So that's how we explain there's so many other Buddhas in those places. But how they came up with all those big names, I don't know, I can't explain, but ask the Mahayana teachers. Now, one interesting thing that all these paradises have is that it's all flat. Okay, what time is it? Okay, just give me 5 more minutes. So this, all the land is flat. Okay, why is it flat? In Singapore, you might say, oh, flat place is boring, right? You like mountains, don't you? Okay, this is just my guess. You know, the Lotus Sutra and Afghanistan are very close. Some people actually say probably some writers came from Afghanistan. Afghanistan long ago, okay? Afghanistan is in the mountains. People who live in the mountains love flat places. This is one possible explanation. Why their paradise is all flat. Right? And they have all those jewels and so on. In other words, whatever you wish is all there. Okay? But the Buddha land is very one single thought. Meaning you have to be there in the present moment when you must be present. Okay? Here, just one last point, right? This is a problematic verse, section 35 and 37. Puna's Buddha land. There will be no evil ways and no womankind. Can you imagine no women there? Okay? Women don't get angry yet, don't do anything yet, okay? For all living beings will be born, transformed, and have no carnal passion, no desire. All the beings in this domain will always have 2 articles or 2 kinds of food. One, the food of joy in the law, and the other, the food of the gladness in meditation. Let me explain, okay? Why are there no women in the paradises? Kuan Yin or Pravasya. Is Kuan Yin male or female? Both, right? When you say both, be careful, okay? The right word here is androgyne. Androgyne. Androgyne means he has the qualities, the good qualities of femininity, masculinity, not male, female, okay? That's hermaphrodite, something else, okay? Whenever you see Kuan Yin, I was confused when I was a kid. I said, it looks like a woman, but flat chest, you know? I was a kid. then I realized what it represents compassion. Compassion is neither male nor female. Right? Compassion looks kindly. Okay? So, in Western paradise, there is no sex. Of course, the storyteller will tell you there are men. Actually, it means they are like. I mean, the Buddha has risen above sexuality. There is no male, female, so to speak. But I don't know why they say no womankind. Because in those days, it's acceptable, because it's a patriarchal system. But today, there are a lot of problems trying to explain this. But I think I've tried. Okay? Now, 27 talks about articles of food. Here, meaning this food is not ordinary food. First kind of food is being happy with the Dharma, joy. Their food is joy in the Dharma. I wrote on reflections. Every week we send out reflections. And I said that if you really want to be happy, you can't just take solid food, you must also have joy. Joy, be happy. And the second food is the joy of meditation. Okay? Alright, I think I'll stop here for questions. Is it okay?
Thanks, Piya. So any questions do you want to clarify with Piya? Any questions?
Yes.
What do you mean by single moment thought? What do you mean by land as a single moment thought?
Okay, the question is, what does it mean? The Buddha land is one thought moment. That's the way our mind works, one thought moment at a time. So in other words, we've got to pay attention to what's happening right here before us. Actually, this is a saying I remember. I know reading or someone told me from those Hawaiian Buddhists. They were talking about this. The Buddha land is just one thought moment. In other words, it is a state of mind. Another teacher of Amitabha Buddhism once said, Western paradise is not 108,000 miles to the west. It is right here in your heart if you practice the Dharma. And I think it's a very wonderful way of talking about it. It's not a place you go to, it's the nature of your heart. Okay? That's one explanation. Okay?
Any other questions?
This one, what are the three animals? This one, you were saying three animals.
The three animals she was asking. Correct?
Which part was that? Oh, you're talking about three characters who follow Sanjan. It's monkey, pixie, and sandy. Monkey, pixie, and sandy. Oh, you're still writing the book, is it?
Monkey means hatred. And then pixie means greed.
Yeah.
And then the sandy means illusion.
Yeah.
Because it's gong type.
Pixie is the pain.
What is that?
Oh, that one,
The journey to the west. Journey to the west.
Into.
Yes?
In this interdependent world, we know that it's impossible to have a single religion in this world. So just now you talked about religion teaching us to be a better person. If you take someone like, say, modern tradition, in your framework of Tata children, is something what should be done close to that.
So you're talking about good people in other religions,
right?
Yeah. So what exactly is your question?
In your framework, when you see her as
Where do they fit
something
in?
to achieve?
Okay. Now, every good action will somehow bring their result. Okay. But if the action is done with wrong views, the wrong view also will act on this person. So karma is very complicated. Okay. Now let me tell you, there's a very simple instruction given by the Buddha in one of the suttas. Right? I'm not going to name the sutta, it's too long. If you want the name, email me, I'll give it to you. Okay? So in this sutta, this Brahmin Janusoni asked the Buddha, says, if I give dana, if I give offerings to my deceased ones, will they get it? Will they say yes? They are pretas, they are these departed beings, they'll get it. But then the Buddha goes on to teach, he says, every giving has its fruit. No giving is useless. Every giving bears its fruit. However, it says there are people who do not keep to the precepts. They're not morally virtuous. In other words, for example, that someone may be very kind, builds schools, very generous, public-spirited, but he leads a double life. He doesn't keep the precept, break precepts, and so on. So what happens? This person is generous, but doesn't keep precepts. Very interesting explanation of Buddha gives. He says, this person will get back all the wonderful things he has given. He'll be well treated in the next life. But because he didn't keep the precepts, he'll be reborn as an animal. So you'll be a well-kept elephant, a well-kept, does that mention chicken, cows? In India they're regarded as sacred, I suppose. In Singapore you can talk about cats, dogs. You notice in Singapore cats and dogs are better treated than human beings sometimes, right? So maybe in the past life they did a lot of good stuff, but they didn't keep the precepts. So that's one way to answer it. Depends on the moral conduct of the person and the good act. They do not always coincide. So if someone like Mother Teresa has done lots of good stuff, of course she maybe be reborn in the heavens, or she might even become a Buddhist in the future life. There are many people who are non-Buddhists and became arahats, So everyone has a chance. When they meet the Buddha, and then they clear away all those idea about self and selfishness. This is what divides us, idea of self and selfishness. You find that there are monks or meditators, they easily meet each other, meditators from other religions, and there are a lot of common things to talk about when you talk about meditation. Because meditation is one practice we go beyond the written word. We deal with our own inner peace, so there's a lot to talk about. So you find there's a lot of just dialogue there. And that's a very wonderful way of communicating. Okay.
What Piya talked about this pet thing, and it reminds me of a story saying that, there were two persons who are neighbors. One is a monk, the other one is a butcher. And then when this monk and the butcher, every morning, they get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So one gets up to do the slaughter, the other one gets up to do the chanting. So this butcher asked the monk, why not, if we don't want to miss each other's work, so when you get up, you wake me up, and when I get up, I wake you up. So after that, then later, both of them pass away. And then it was found that the monk was in the hell, and the butcher was in the heaven. Why? Because every morning, the monk wake up the butcher to do the killing. And then the butcher wake up the monk to do the chanting. So we're very sure that when we are doing the generosity or anything, what will be the result outcome? So that's very dangerous. And then the other thing is that every moment, no matter what we practice, Mahayana, Theravada, Pure Land or anything, 5 precepts. Keep the precept. The precept is number 1. If we don't keep the precept, when you do the meditation, what you have done wrong will come to our mind. So we cannot keep still. This is why it is very important for us about the precept, as what Piya just now mentioned. Any other questions? Any other questions? If no, then Piya, you got anything you want to amend? Because I respect him a lot. Because he was one of my best trainer for my Buddhist teacher in the schools.
Yes, we had a wonderful friendship those days. I mean, one of my first friends when I came to Singapore, Dr. Ang and Dr. Teo, and other people. So we're very happy memories. Okay, we're going to close, right?
Yeah, if you want to know.
Yeah, I'm going to finish up. Now, don't be afraid to question the teachers. Because the more you question, the more you hone as we start thinking, we need to learn, we become better teachers. Now you hear in the Lotus Sutra, the teachers tell you, oh, there are so many Buddhas, so this is another problem many of the early Buddhists have. So many Buddhas, millions, 900 million, and so on. Why do we need so many? Okay, one reason is because the mathematicians in those days were beginning to learn about big numbers, infinitesimals. So whenever they discover something new like that, they will apply it to religion. Okay, so many Buddhas. They say, why not so many Buddhas? You know, so that's one explanation. Yeah? So my friendly response to one of my friends, I say, why, you got so many Buddhas? If there are as many as like sand on the Ganges River, it's like an inflation, you know. But early Buddhism is only one, that's good enough. Okay? So you have a choice. If you think about so many Buddhas and you don't know how to figure it, it's okay. Just remember it starts with one Buddha. From the one come the many, remember? Come to Ching? And whenever you are in difficulty, even if you don't know how to chant, always reflect, picture. There's always only one Buddha sitting in every temple. There's one Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, you can see there. And this Buddha never gave up. The 5 monks left him. He just said, well, majority wins, you know, so I must be wrong. There will be no Buddhism. He alone said that. Mara attacked him, but he didn't give up. He didn't give up. Remember, meditate on the single Buddha, alone under the Bodhi tree. Never give up whatever good thing you want to do. Okay? Thank you for your patience.
Sharing of a story with you. I remember that there was a psychologist. He went to Africa, to a village. So he wanted to play a game with the children there, the kids there. So he put the fruit in the basket and then placed the basket in front of a tree. And he told those children, okay, any one of you who reach there, you will have the whole basket of the fruit. And when I say 1, 2, 3, go, you go. So he said 1, 2, 3, go. And to his surprise, he saw that all the children, no matter tall or short, fat or thin, all hold each other's hand. They ran towards the tree. At last, they shared the fruits. So he was very surprised and he asked them, why did you do so? And then all the children answered together, Ubuntu. Ubuntu in African language means that together we achieve. So for this Lotus Sutra course, no matter we are Theravada, Mahayana or Vajrayana, together all of us are walking on the path of the Buddha toward the enlightenment. So that all of us, Ubuntu. Yes.
Okay. So please remember this from Voltaire. It says, those who make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. What we believe will hold us, what we understand will free us. Okay. All these are in your notes, the sheets that don't have that afterwards. Okay, let us now close this one together. This introduction. So remember this wonderful moment we are gathered together here in peace, seeking the Dharma, and hopefully we have the strength and wisdom to share this joy with others. We don't have to share our knowledge. Better it is to share our joy with others. When people are joyful, then they ask you what you know, and the learning is more effective. Let us recite this dedication. By these merits, may I attain awakening in this life, or the path of Buddhahood direction. By these merits, may my family, teachers, relatives, people I love and know, be well and happy. By these merits, may all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.